I held the pen over the signature line. One signature. That's all it would take. Sign the IEP paperwork, and my 9-year-old son would be placed in a special education school for children with severe learning disabilities. Cost to the district, $62,000 per year. Cost to Marcus, his future. The pen was shaking in my hand because I'm Dr. Keisha Williams. I'm a school psychologist. I have a PhD in educational psychology. I've conducted over 400 IEP evaluations in my career, and I was about to sign paperwork I knew was wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Dr. Keisha Williams. I'm 39 years old. I've been a school psychologist for 12 years. I work in Fulton County, just outside Atlanta. My job is evaluating children for learning disabilities, ADHD, autism, intellectual disabilities. I test them, write reports, attend IEP meetings, recommend services. I help kids get the support they need. Or at least that's what I thought I did. 6 months ago, Marcus's third-grade teacher called me Mrs. Henderson. Sweet woman, 20 years of experience. Dr. Williams, I'm concerned about Marcus. He's struggling with reading below grade level. I think he might need an evaluation.
My stomach dropped because I'm Marcus's mother before I'm a psychologist, and hearing that your child might have a learning disability hits different when it's your own kid.
What are you seeing? I asked, trying to sound professional, trying not to sound like a terrified mother. He's reading at first grade level, reversing letters, difficulty with phonics, and he's frustrated, getting angry when he can't read. I think we should test him. I knew what that meant. IEP evaluation, special education assessment, the process I guide other parents through every single day. Now it was my turn to be the parent. Okay, I said, let's do it. I work in a different school district than where Marcus attends, conflict of interest otherwise, so Marcus would be evaluated by a psychologist in his district. The psychologist assigned to his case was Dr. Patricia Vance. I didn't know her personally, but I knew her reputation, 23 years of experience, well respected, published articles on learning disabilities. Marcus's evaluation was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I took the day off work, drove him to the district office, tried to act calm. Marcus looked up at me in the waiting room. Mom, am I stupid? My heart broke. No, baby. You're smart. We just need to figure out how your brain learns best. Jamal said only dumb kids go to special ed. Jamal doesn't know what he's talking about, but I understood his fear because I'd been there. When I was 7, my second grade teacher told my mother I had ADHD, couldn't sit still, couldn't focus, disruptive in class. They put me on medication, Ritalin, for 5 years. It made me a zombie, quiet, compliant, couldn't think, couldn't feel, just sat there. At age 12, new school psychologist tested me, comprehensive evaluation. Results: I didn't have ADHD. I was gifted IQ of 138. I was bored, acting out because the work was too easy. They took me off the medication, put me in advanced classes. I thrived. That experience is why I became a school psychologist, to make sure other kids didn't get mislabeled the way I was, to make sure the right kids got help and the wrong kids didn't get medicated into submission. And now my own son was being evaluated. Dr. Vance came out to the waiting room, mid-50s, gray hair pulled back, professional smile. Marcus, I'm Dr. Vance. Ready to do some puzzles with me? Marcus nodded, looked back at me. I'll be right here, I said. They disappeared into the testing room. I sat in the waiting room for 90 minutes, checked my phone, answered work emails, tried not to think about what was happening behind that door. When they came out, Marcus looked tired. Dr. Vance looked, I don't know, neutral, professional. We'll have the report ready in 2 weeks, she said. We'll schedule an IEP meeting to review results. That was it. 90 minutes of testing and 2 weeks of waiting. The waiting was the worst part. Every night I'd watch Marcus struggle with homework, see him reverse his B's and D's, see him get frustrated, throw his pencil, say, I hate reading. And I'd wonder, What's wrong with my baby? What did I miss? How did I not see this earlier? The mom guilt was crushing. 2 weeks later, the report arrived via email. I opened it at my desk at work, between clients, like it was just another report, but my hands were shaking. Psychological evaluation report. Student Marcus Williams, age 9. Evaluator Dr. Patricia Vance, PhD. I skipped to the summary, the part where they tell you what's wrong. Summary and recommendations. Based on comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation, Marcus presents with severe specific learning disability in reading dyslexia with co-occurring processing speed deficits and working memory impairments. Cognitive testing reveals significant scatter across domains, indicating neurological dysfunction consistent with learning disability profile. Current reading skills are at 1.2 grade level, more than 2 years below expected. Phonological processing scores in the second percentile, reading fluency severely impaired. Recommended placement, full-time special education in specialized learning disabilities program. Student requires intensive remediation, small group instruction, 4:1 ratio, assistive technology, and daily specialized reading intervention. Estimated cost $62,000 per year. I read it 3 times. Severe learning disability, neurological dysfunction, full-time special education, $62,000 per year. I'm a school psychologist. I write these reports. I know what severe means. It means Marcus would be pulled from general education entirely, placed in a separate classroom with other students who have significant disabilities. It means his education would look completely different from typical kids. It means a label that would follow him forever. I closed my laptop, put my head in my hands. My baby. My smart, funny, creative baby who loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist. Severe learning disability. But something felt wrong. I pulled the report back up. Read the actual test scores, not just the summary. Cognitive assessment, WISC V. Verbal comprehension, 118, high average. Visual spatial, 112 average. Fluid reasoning, 1220, superior. Working memory, 95 average. Processing speed, 88, low average. I stopped. Read those scores again. Marcus's IQ was in the high average to superior range. Verbal comprehension of 118. Fluid reasoning of 121. Those aren't scores for a kid with severe learning disability and neurological dysfunction. Those are scores for a bright kid with a specific weakness. I kept reading. Academic achievement, Y at 3. Reading comprehension, SWI anoxic, below average. Reading fluency, 76, borderline. Phonological processing, 71, low. Okay, so reading was weak. I knew that, but 71 minus 82 range isn't severe. It's mild to moderate. I pulled up the diagnostic criteria for a specific learning disability in my own files, the ones I use for my evaluations. To qualify for SLD, there has to be a severe discrepancy between ability and achievement, usually defined as 1.5 to 2 standard deviations below expected based on IQ. Marcus's IQ was 115 average across domains, expected reading score around 100, actual reading score 76, meters 82. That's about 1 standard deviation below expected, maybe 1.25. Not severe, not even close to the threshold for full-time special education. In the testing protocol, I looked at what tests Dr. Vance had administered. Cognitive, WISC V, 90 minutes. Achievement, YAT 3, 45 minutes. Total testing time, 135 minutes. Wait! Standard protocol for comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation requires 6 minus 8 hours of testing, cognitive, achievement, processing assessments, behavioral observations, multiple sessions. Dr. Vance tested Marcus for 135 minutes, 2.5 hours in one session. That's not comprehensive. That's bare minimum screening. I pulled out my phone, called the special education director for Marcus's district, a woman named Jennifer Morris. I'd met her at conferences. Jennifer, it's Keisha Williams. I have a question about evaluation protocols in your district. Sure, what's up? What's your standard testing time for SLD evaluations? We follow state guidelines, minimum 6 hours across multiple sessions. Why? My son was evaluated by Dr. Vance. Report says comprehensive evaluation. Testing time was 135 minutes. Silence, then that can't be right. Patricia knows the protocols. Can you pull the file? I'll check and call you back. She called back 20 minutes later. Keisha, I'm looking at Marcus's file now. Dr. Vance logged 90 minutes of testing, one session. That's not sufficient for the diagnosis she's recommending. What do I do? You have the right to request an independent educational evaluation, i.e., district pays for an outside psychologist to reevaluate. If you're questioning the results, I'd recommend it. Okay, I want an IED. I'll send the paperwork. That night, I told my husband Anthony what I'd found. Anthony is a software engineer, smart guy. Not an education person, but he trusts me on this stuff. So the test is wrong? He asked. I don't know if it's wrong, but it's incomplete, and the diagnosis doesn't match the scores. What happens if the IET says the same thing? I hadn't thought about that. What if I was wrong? What if my professional opinion was clouded by mom denial? Then we accept it and get Marcus the help he needs. And if the IED says Patricia was wrong, then I'm going to find out why she diagnosed a severe learning disability based on incomplete testing. Anthony looked at me. Keisha, you're going into investigator mode. I know that. Look, she tested our son for 90 minutes and recommended $62,000 in services. I'm allowed to ask questions. I know, just be careful. You're a mom first right now, not a psychologist. He was right. But I couldn't turn off the psychologist part of my brain. Something was wrong with that evaluation, and I was going to find out what. The IED was conducted by Dr. Michael Torres, independent psychologist, 20 years of experience, no connection to the district. He tested Marcus over 3 sessions, 8 hours total, comprehensive battery, everything. Results came back 2 weeks later. I opened the report with Anthony beside me. Independent educational evaluation, student Marcus Williams, age 9. Evaluator Dr. Michael Torres, PhD. Summary. Marcus presents with mild dyslexia characterized by phonological processing weaknesses. Cognitive abilities are solidly average to above average across all domains. Reading skills are below expected level, but do not meet criteria for severe learning disability. Recommended services: 3 hours per week of specialized reading, tutoring, small group or individual, classroom accommodations, extended time, audiobooks for complex texts, progress monitoring every 6 weeks. Marcus does not require full-time special education placement. Recommended services can be provided within general education setting with resource room support. Estimated cost, $4,000 per year for tutoring services. I read it twice, then a third time. But $4,000 per year, not $62,000. 3 hours per week of tutoring, not full-time special education. Mild dyslexia, not severe learning disability with neurological dysfunction. Anthony said, so Patricia was wrong. Very wrong.
Why?
I mean, she's experienced. How does an experienced psychologist get it that wrong? I didn't have an answer, but I was going to find one. The IEP meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. District would have to accept the IEP results. Marcus would get tutoring services, not full-time placement. But I couldn't let it go because Dr. Vance's evaluation wasn't just wrong. It was dramatically wrong. Incomplete testing, misinterpreted scores, diagnosis that would have changed Marcus's entire educational trajectory. Why? I did something I probably shouldn't have. I pulled public records for the private special education school Dr. Vance had recommended for Marcus, Bridges Academy for Learning Differences. Looked at their enrollment data, tuition costs, funding sources. Out of 127 students enrolled, 119 were publicly funded, district placed, meaning the school district paid their tuition. Average tuition $58,000 per year. Total district funding to Bridges Academy, approximately $6.9 million annually. I looked at where those referrals came from. Dr. Patricia Vance, 34 students over the past 3 years. 34 students, all diagnosed with severe learning disabilities requiring full-time placement, all sent to Bridges Academy. Average cost per student, $60,000 per year over 3-year enrollment. 34 students, x $60,000 equals sign $2,040,000 per year in tuition. Over 3 years, $6,120,000. Dr. Vance had referred over $6 million worth of students to one school. That seemed like a lot. I pulled referral data for other school psychologists in the district. Average referrals to private placement per psychologist, 3-5 students per year. Dr. Vance, 11-12 students per year. Triple the average. Why? I called Jennifer Morris again, the special ed director. Jennifer, do you track referral patterns for private placements? We're supposed to. Why? Can you pull Dr. Vance's referral data for the past 3 years? Keisha, what's this about? My son almost got placed at Bridges Academy based on incomplete testing. Now I'm seeing Dr. Vance refers a lot of kids there. I want to know if it's a pattern. I'll pull the data. But Keisha, if you're implying something inappropriate, I'm not implying anything. I'm asking questions. She called back 2 hours later, voice tight. Keisha, you were right. Patricia has referred 34 students to Bridges Academy in 3 years. Next highest referrer has 8 students. This is a significant outlier. What does that mean? It means I need to review her evaluation files, all of them. If she's over-identifying students for private placement, that's a serious problem. Will you let me know what you find? I can't discuss personnel matters with you, but thank you for bringing this to my attention. I hung up feeling vindicated and terrified at the same time, because if Dr. Vance was overdiagnosing students, Marcus wasn't the only victim. There were 33 others. Kids who might not have severe learning disabilities, who might have been placed in restrictive settings unnecessarily, who might have been labeled for life because of incomplete evaluations. And their families trusted Dr. Vance the way I almost did, the way I almost signed that IEP paperwork, because I held the pen over the signature line that day, the day before the IIE results came back. I held that pen and I almost signed, almost agreed to send Marcus to Bridges Academy, almost accepted the diagnosis, almost destroyed my son's confidence and future because an expert told me to. The only reason I didn't sign, Marcus cried. The night before the IEP meeting, he crawled into bed with me and Anthony, 9 years old, tears streaming down his face. Mom, please don't send me to the special school. I'm not stupid. I can get better at reading, please. And I promised him I wouldn't sign anything until we got the second opinion. Not because of my professional expertise, not because I analyzed the scores and found discrepancies, because my baby was crying. That's the truth I don't tell people. That's the reality I hide behind my PhD and my professional analysis. I almost failed Marcus, almost let Dr. Vance's incomplete evaluation determine his future. And I only caught it because Marcus begged me not to sign. I'm a school psychologist. I evaluate children for disabilities. I'm supposed to be the expert. And I almost couldn't save my own son. That's what kept me awake at night. That's what made me keep digging into Dr. Vance's referrals. Because if I, a trained psychologist, almost fell for it, how many parents who aren't psychologists have fallen for it? How many kids are at Bridges Academy right now who don't belong there? And why was Dr. Vance sending so many students to one school? I needed answers, even if getting them meant destroying someone's career, even if it meant discovering something I didn't want to know. 2 weeks after the IIG, Jennifer Morris called me. Keisha, can you come to the district office? There's something you need to see. I went that afternoon. Jennifer met me in her office, closed the door. On her desk, a stack of evaluation reports, maybe 20 of them. These are Dr. Vance's evaluations from the past year. I've reviewed all 34 from the past 3 years, but I'm showing you these 11 because they're the most concerning. What did you find? Jennifer opened the first file. This is Tyler Chen, age 8. Dr. Vance evaluated him for ADHD and learning disabilities. Testing time, 90 minutes. Diagnosis, severe learning disability in math and reading, ADHD combined type, processing disorder, recommended placement, Bridges Academy. Cost $61,000 per year. She opened another file. This is Aisha Johnson, age 10. Testing time, 85 minutes. Diagnosis, severe learning disability, auditory processing disorder, executive functioning deficits. Recommended placement, Bridges Academy, cost $59,000. Another file, Emma Rodriguez, age 7. Testing time, 95 minutes. Diagnosis, severe learning disability, speech language impairment, social emotional disorder. Bridges Academy, $58,000. She kept going, 11 files, 11 children. All evaluated in 85, 95 minutes, all diagnosed with multiple severe disabilities, all recommended for Bridges Academy, all costing $55,000, $65,000 per year.
What's wrong with these?
I asked, though I already knew. Every single one has insufficient testing time, diagnoses that don't match the test scores, and all were placed at Bridges Academy without the district questioning the recommendations. How much has the district spent on these 11 students? Jennifer pulled up a spreadsheet. These 11 students, $1.9 million over 3 years of placement. Almost $2 million for 11 kids who might not need full-time special education.
What are you going to do?
I asked. I'm requesting IEs for all of them, and I'm launching a formal investigation into Dr. Vance's evaluation practices. Can I help? Jennifer looked at me. You're a parent in this district. There's a conflict of interest. I'm also a school psychologist. I review evaluations for a living. Keisha, if this goes where I think it's going, it could get ugly, legal, criminal even. Are you sure you want to be involved? Criminal. The word hung there. What do you mean criminal? If Patricia is deliberately misdiagnosing students to funnel them to a private school, that could be fraud, especially if there's a financial incentive. You think she's getting paid? I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. I drove home. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Criminal fraud, that's what Jennifer said. Dr. Patricia Vance, 23 years of experience, well-respected psychologist, potentially running a fraud scheme, and Marcus almost became victim number 35. That night, I couldn't eat dinner, couldn't focus on anything. Anthony found me in Marcus's room, watching him sleep. You okay? Jennifer thinks Dr. Vance might be committing fraud, deliberately misdiagnosing kids to send them to Bridges Academy. Jesus, why would she do that? Money has to be money, but I don't know how yet. Keisha, this isn't your fight. You got Marcus the right services. Let the district handle the rest. But I couldn't let it go, because those 11 files Jennifer showed me, those weren't just numbers, those were kids. Kids whose parents trusted an expert, kids who got labeled with severe disabilities they might not have, kids whose entire educational experience was changed because someone lied. The way someone lied about me when I was 7, told my mother I had ADHD, medicated me for 5 years. I became a psychologist to prevent that from happening to other kids. Now I discovered it was happening systematically for profit. And I was the only person who understood both sides, the professional side and the parent side. I couldn't walk away, even if it got ugly, even if it got criminal. Someone had to speak for those kids, and their parents needed to know the truth. I started with the 11 files Jennifer had shown me, requested the full evaluation reports through public records. As a parent in the district, I had the right. Took 2 weeks, but they came. I spread them across my dining room table, 11 thick folders, 11 children. Anthony walked by, stopped. What are you doing? Reviewing evaluations. Keisha, the district is investigating. Why are you? Because I need to see it myself. I need to understand what she did. He sighed, kissed the top of my head. Just don't stay up all night. But I did stay up all night. Because the pattern wasn't just wrong, it was systematic. Every single evaluation followed the same formula. Step 1, minimal testing. 85-95 minutes, one session. Step 2, administer only 2 assessments, YCV for cognitive, YCV for achievement. Nothing else, no processing assessments, no behavioral observations, no rating scales from teachers. Step 3, cherry pick the lowest scores. Ignore the strengths. Write a report emphasizing deficits. Step 4, diagnose severe learning disability with multiple co-occurring disorders, even when scores didn't support severity. Step 5, recommend Bridges Academy every single time. It was a template, like she copy-pasted the same report 11 times, changed the names and scores, but kept the conclusions identical. I pulled one example. Tyler Chen, age 8. Dr. Vance's report summary. Tyler presents with severe specific learning disability in reading and mathematics, with co-occurring ADHD and processing speed deficits. Cognitive scatter indicates neurological dysfunction, requires full-time special education. Tyler's actual scores. Full-scale IQ 108 average, reading 89 low average,
Math 92 average.
processing speed 85 low average. Those scores don't indicate severe anything. Tyler was slightly below average in reading. That's it. He needed tutoring, maybe 2-3 hours per week, not full-time special education costing $61,000 per year. But Dr. Vance had written neurological dysfunction based on what? A processing speed score of 85. That's low average within normal range, not neurological dysfunction. I checked another file. Aisha Johnson, age 10. Dr. Vance's summary. Aisha presents with severe learning disabilities across multiple domains, auditory processing disorder, and executive functioning deficits requiring comprehensive special education services. Aisha's actual scores. Full-scale IQ 102 average, reading 94 average, math 88 low average, auditory processing not tested. Wait, Dr. Vance diagnosed auditory processing disorder, but she didn't test for it. There was no phonological processing assessment, nothing. She diagnosed a disorder she didn't assess, but that's not incomplete. That's fabrication. I went through all 11 files, same pattern, diagnoses that didn't match scores, disorders that weren't assessed, severity classifications that weren't warranted, and every single child sent to Bridges Academy. I pulled up Bridges Academy's website, looked at their staff page. Executive Director, Dr. Margaret Hartwell. Board of Directors, 8 members, mostly local business people, educational consultants. And there, fourth name down, Thomas Reid, Med Special Education Director, Atlanta Public Schools. Thomas Reid. I knew that name. I'd seen it on district emails. Special Education Director, the person who approves private placements, the person who would have approved Marcus's placement if I'd signed that IEP. I Googled Thomas Reid Atlanta, found his LinkedIn profile. Master's degree in special education from University of Georgia, graduated 2003. Special Education Director since 2018. Prior positions, Special Education Coordinator, Resource Teacher, Graduate Teaching Assistant at UGA from 2001 to 2003. I stopped. Read that last part again. Graduate Teaching Assistant at UGA 2001 to 2003. The same years I was in grad school at UGA, getting my specialist degree in school psychology before I went on for my PhD. I pulled out my old grad school records, found my transcript from UGA. Fall 2002, EPSI 7500, Assessment of Learning Disabilities, Instructor Thomas Reid, GTA. Thomas Reid taught my assessment class 20 years ago. I remembered him. Young guy, maybe 25, enthusiastic, passionate about helping kids with disabilities. He ran the practicum where we learned to administer IQ tests. He supervised my first evaluation. He wrote one of my recommendation letters for my PhD program. Thomas Reid, my graduate school mentor, was on the board of directors for Bridges Academy. The school receiving $6.9 million in district funding annually. The school where Dr. Vance sent all her students. And Thomas was the special education director who approved those placements. My hands went cold. I pulled up the Georgia Secretary of State Business Registry. Searched Bridges Academy for learning differences.
Incorporation date 2017.
Registered agent, Margaret Hartwell. Board members filed with the state. Margaret Hartwell, Thomas Reid, Patricia Vance. Patricia Vance, the school psychologist, was on the board of directors for the school where she sent all her students. That's a conflict of interest. Massive conflict of interest. But it got worse. I searched for property records. Who owned Bridges Academy's building? Property owner, Hartwell Reid Educational Holdings, LLC. I searched that LLC. Members, Margaret Hartwell, 60%, Thomas Reid, 40%. Thomas Reid, Special Education Director for Atlanta Public Schools, owned 40% of the company that owned Bridges Academy, the school receiving millions in public funding from his own district that he approved. I sat back, stared at my computer screen. This wasn't just bad evaluations. This wasn't just Dr. Vance overdiagnosing students. This was a fraud scheme. Dr. Vance evaluated students, diagnosed severe disabilities they didn't have, recommended Bridges Academy. Thomas Reid approved the placements as special education director. Bridges Academy received $60,000 per student from the district. Thomas Reid received 40% of the profits as part owner. It was a closed loop, a perfect scam. And Thomas Reid, my mentor, the man who taught me how to evaluate children, who wrote my recommendation letter, who told me our job is to help kids, not label them, was defrauding the district, stealing public funds, destroying children's educational futures for profit. I needed more evidence because what I had was circumstantial property records and board memberships. That's not proof of fraud. I needed to show intent, show the money trail, show that Thomas and Patricia knew they were misdiagnosing students. I called Jennifer Morris, the special ed director who'd shown me the files. Jennifer, does Thomas Reid have any oversight role for special education in your district? Thomas, no. He's in Atlanta Public Schools, different district. Why? Do you know him? We've met at state conferences. He's well respected, been in the field for 20 years. Why are you asking about Thomas? What if I told you he owns part of Bridges Academy? Silence. Then that can't be right. Thomas approves placements to Bridges from his district if he has a financial interest. That's fraud. Jesus. Keisha, are you sure? I have the property records, LLC filings. He owns 40%. That's illegal. Undisclosed conflict of interest. If he's been approving placements to a school he profits from, how many students has he placed there? I don't know, but I can find out. I spent the next 3 days filing public records requests with Atlanta Public Schools, student placement data, private school referrals, costs, everything. The records came back a week later. Over the past 5 years, Atlanta Public Schools had placed 93 students at Bridges Academy. Average cost per student, $61,000 per year. Average length of placement, 3.2 years. Total cost to the district, $18,127,800. $18 million to a school that Thomas Reid owned 40% of. I did the math. If Bridges Academy was profitable, if they were keeping even 20% profit margin after expenses, $18.1 million in revenue, 20% profit equal sign $3.6 million. Thomas's 40% share equal sign $1.44 million over 5 years. Thomas Reid had made over $1 million sending students to a school he owned. Students who were diagnosed by Dr. Patricia Vance, who was on the school's board. I pulled Patricia's referral data again, this time looking at where she worked. Dr. Patricia Vance, contract school psychologist, worked for 3 different school districts: Atlanta Public Schools, Fulton County, DeKalb County. Total students referred to Bridges Academy across all 3 districts, 127 students over 5 years. 127 students at $60,000 average per year for 3 years equals sign $22,860,000. Nearly $23 million in placements. From one psychologist to one school where she was on the board and where the special ed director who approved the placements owned 40%. I needed to know if Patricia was getting paid. I filed another public records request, this time for Bridges Academy's financial records. As a private school receiving public funds, they were subject to disclosure. The records took 3 weeks, but they came. I found what I was looking for on page 47 of the 990 tax filing. Professional consulting fees. Dr. Patricia Vance, educational consultant, $187.50, 2023. Bridges Academy was paying Dr. Vance $187,500 per year. For what? Educational consulting. I divided that by the number of students she'd referred, 127, over 5 years, average 25 per year. $187, 525 equals sign $7,500 per student. Dr. Vance was getting $7,500 for every student she sent to Bridges Academy. That's not consulting. That's a kickback. I sat at my dining room table, surrounded by documents, public records, financial filings, student data, and I felt sick because Thomas Reid taught me how to evaluate children, told me our job was to help them to make sure they got appropriate services. Not too much, not too little, just right. And now he was running a scheme that deliberately over-identified children, placed them in restrictive settings they didn't need, for money. 127 children over 5 years. How many of them actually needed full-time special education? How many were like Marcus? Bright kids with minor learning challenges who needed tutoring, not segregation? How many parents were told their child had a severe learning disability and believed it because they trusted the experts? The way I almost believed it about Marcus, I pulled out my phone, called Jennifer Morris. Jennifer, I found it. The money trail. Patricia Vance gets $187,500 per year from Bridges Academy, $7,500 per student referred, and Thomas Reid owns 40% of the school. They're running a fraud scheme. Keisha, this is huge. We need to report this to the state, to the FBI. I know. Are you willing to be a witness if this goes to prosecution? Was I? Being a witness meant destroying Thomas Reid's career, the man who helped start mine, who believed in me when I was a nervous grad student, who told me I had potential. Being a witness meant admitting I almost fell for the scheme. Almost sent my own son to Bridges Academy, almost signed paperwork based on a fraudulent evaluation. Being a witness meant facing the fact that I'm a school psychologist and I couldn't protect my own child. Yes, I said, I'll be a witness. Okay, I'm calling the FBI today. And Keisha, thank you. You saved a lot of kids. But I didn't save them. Not yet. They were still at Bridges Academy, still labeled with disabilities they might not have, still segregated from their peers. And 127 families still believed their children were severely disabled because experts told them so. After I hung up with Jennifer, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I called Thomas Reid. He answered on the second ring. This is Thomas. Thomas, it's Keisha Williams. We met at UGA. You taught my assessment class in 2002. A pause. Keisha Williams. I remember you. Excellent student. How are you? I'm good. I'm actually calling because I need your advice. I'm a school psychologist now, working in Fulton County. That's wonderful. What can I help with? My son was evaluated by Dr. Patricia Vance. Do you know her? Another pause, longer this time. I know Patricia, we've worked together over the years. She recommended my son for placement at Bridges Academy, full-time special education, but I got an IED and it showed he only has mild dyslexia, doesn't need full-time placement. And I'm concerned because when I looked at Patricia's referral patterns, she sends a lot of kids to Bridges.
Silence.
I could hear him breathing. Thomas, I also noticed you're on the board of directors for Bridges Academy and that you own part of the building through an LLC. Is that right? Keisha, I don't appreciate being interrogated. I'm not interrogating. I'm asking because I found public records showing you've approved 93 placements to Bridges from your district over 5 years. That's $18 million in public funding to a school you own part of. And Patricia gets paid $187,500 per year by that same school. That seems like a conflict of interest. His voice changed. Cold. Hard. You need to be very careful about what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Public record facts. Keisha, you were my student. I helped you build your career. I wrote your recommendation letter. And this is how you repay me? By investigating me? Accusing me of what? Fraud? Did you know Patricia's evaluations are incomplete? 90 minutes of testing, diagnoses that don't match scores. She diagnosed my son with severe learning disability based on test results that showed mild dyslexia. That's not clinical judgment. That's deliberate misdiagnosis. Children are complex. Sometimes the test scores don't capture the full picture. She didn't test for half the things she diagnosed. She said my son had processing disorders she never assessed. That's not missing the full picture. That's making things up. You're a parent. You're biased. You want to believe your son is fine. I am a school psychologist with a PhD. I know how to read test scores. And I know that 127 students in 5 years all needing full-time placement at the same school is statistically impossible, unless someone is systematically over-identifying them. I think this conversation is over. Thomas, did you know Patricia was misdiagnosing students to funnel them to Bridges so you could profit? He hung up. I sat there holding my dead phone, and I realized something. He didn't deny it. He didn't say that's not true or you're wrong about the numbers. He just said the conversation was over because he knew. He'd known all along. And he'd done it anyway. For 5 years, 127 students, nearly $23 million in placements. My mentor, the man who taught me to help children, had built a career destroying them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Thomas, about sitting in his classroom 20 years ago, listening to him lecture about ethical assessment practices. The most important thing, he'd said, is to remember these are children, not numbers, not test scores. Children whose futures depend on us getting it right. Never over-identify. Never under-identify. Get it right. I'd written that down, put it in my notes, made it my professional philosophy. Get it right. And Thomas had spent the past 5 years getting it deliberately wrong for money. How does that happen? How does someone go from passionate educator to fraud? I didn't have an answer, but I needed one. Because if Thomas could become corrupt, could I? Could anyone? I thought about the moment I almost signed Marcus's IEP, the moment I held the pen, the moment I almost trusted Dr. Vance's evaluation without question. What if Marcus hadn't cried? What if he hadn't begged me not to sign? Would I have sent him to Bridges Academy? Would I have trusted the expert and ignored my instincts? Yes, I would have, because I wanted to believe the system worked, that school psychologists were ethical, that evaluations were accurate. I wanted to believe because believing was easier than questioning, easier than fighting, easier than admitting the system I devoted my career to was broken. And 127 families had made the same choice. They'd believed, they'd trusted, and their children paid the price. Anthony found me at 2 a.m. sitting at the dining room table, documents everywhere. You're spiraling, he said gently. 127 kids, Anthony. 127 kids who might not have severe learning disabilities, who might not need full-time special education, who were labeled and segregated because 2 people wanted to make money. And you're going to stop them. You reported it to the FBI. You gave Jennifer the evidence. You did your part. What if I hadn't gotten the IAE? What if I'd signed that paperwork? But you didn't, only because Marcus cried. Not because I was smart enough to catch it, because my 9-year-old begged me not to sign. Keisha, you can't carry that guilt. You questioned the evaluation. You got a second opinion. You protected Marcus.
Barely, and I'm a school psychologist. If I almost failed, how many parents who aren't psychologists fell for it?
He pulled me close. That's not your fault. That's on Thomas and Patricia. But I was Thomas's student. He taught me, what if I'm teaching my students the same way? What if I'm training the next generation of psychologists and some of them become like him? You won't, because you care about getting it right. You always have. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe I was different, that I'd never compromise my ethics for money or convenience. But I'd almost signed that paperwork, almost sent my own son to a program he didn't need. The line between ethical and corrupt wasn't as clear as I'd thought, and that terrified me. The FBI investigation took 6 months of waiting, 6 months of Jennifer updating me periodically, 6 months of wondering if I'd done enough. During that time, I kept working, kept evaluating children, but every evaluation felt different now. Every time I wrote severe learning disability, I questioned it, double-checked my scores, made sure I'd done enough testing, made sure the diagnosis was accurate. Because I'd seen what happens when psychologists cut corners, when they prioritize speed over accuracy, when they let bias or financial incentives cloud their judgment. And I was terrified of becoming that psychologist. Marcus started tutoring 3 hours a week with a reading specialist. Progress was slow but steady. He was reading at grade level now, still struggled with complex texts, but getting better every week. And he was happy in general education with his friends, playing on the soccer team, being a normal fourth grader, not in a special education school, not labeled severely disabled, not segregated from his peers. Because I'd questioned the evaluation, because I'd trusted my instincts over the expert. But 127 other kids were still at Bridges Academy, and I didn't know if they'd ever get out. Then, on a Tuesday in November, Jennifer called. Keisha, the FBI executed search warrants this morning. They raided Bridges Academy, arrested Thomas Reid and Patricia Vance, charged them with conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and theft of government funds. My breath caught. They arrested them? This morning, 6 a.m., it's all over the news. I turned on the TV. Local news. There it was. Thomas Reid in handcuffs, being walked out of his office. Head down, cameras flashing. Patricia Vance being led out of Bridges Academy. Same thing. Handcuffs, cameras. The news anchor, 2 prominent Atlanta educators arrested in alleged special education fraud scheme. Federal prosecutors say the pair misdiagnosed students with disabilities to funnel them into a private school they profited from. Details at 11. I sat down, watched the footage loop. Thomas in handcuffs, Patricia in handcuffs. My mentor arrested because of evidence I'd provided, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just hollow. Anthony came home, found me staring at the TV. They arrested them, I said. I saw. How do you feel? I don't know. I thought I'd feel relieved, but I just feel sad. Why sad? Because Thomas was a good person once. At least I thought he was. And somewhere along the way, he stopped being good. And I don't know when that happened or why. And that scares me. Because you're worried you could become like him. Yeah, Anthony sat beside me. You won't. You know why? Why? Because you questioned the evaluation, even when it was hard, even when it meant admitting the system failed, even when it meant investigating your mentor, you chose truth over comfort. That's the difference. I wanted to believe him, but I kept thinking about that moment with the pen, that moment I almost signed, how close I'd come to being on the other side, to being the psychologist who trusted the wrong evaluation, who sent her child to the wrong placement. The line between hero and villain was thinner than people thought, and I'd almost crossed it. The trial started 8 months after the arrests. 8 months of media coverage, 8 months of Thomas and Patricia's lawyers fighting the charges, 8 months of me wondering if I'd done the right thing. During those 8 months, the district conducted independent educational evaluations for all 127 students Dr. Vance had referred to Bridges Academy. The results came back in waves. Jennifer called me after the first batch of 20 IEs. Keisha, you need to sit down for this. What did they find? Of the first 20 students reevaluated, 17 don't meet criteria for severe learning disability. They need services. Yes, tutoring, accommodations, but not full-time special education. Not $60,000 per year placement. 17 out of 20, 85%. What about the other three? Two have moderate learning disabilities, probably do need more intensive services. One actually does have severe needs, but that's 1 out of 20, Keisha, 1. The pattern held as more IEs came back. By the time all 127 were complete, the numbers were devastating. 103 students didn't need full-time special education. They'd been placed unnecessarily for an average of 3.2 years each. 103 children labeled severely disabled who weren't. 103 families who'd been lied to. And the cost to the district, $19.7 million for unnecessary placements. But the cost to the children? Incalculable. Because you can't give back 3 years of a child's life, can't undo the label, can't erase the segregation from their peers, can't restore the confidence destroyed by being told you're severely disabled when you're not. I thought about Marcus, about how close he'd come to being number 104. And I thought about my own childhood, age 7, misdiagnosed with ADHD, medicated for 5 years. The label had followed me even after they took me off the medication, even after they said we were wrong. Teachers still looked at me differently, still expected me to be disruptive, still treated me like a problem child, even though I was getting straight A's in advanced classes. It took years to shake that label, years to believe I wasn't defective. And 103 children were living that same nightmare because 2 people wanted money. The prosecution called me as a witness on day 4 of the trial. I walked into the courtroom, saw Thomas at the defense table, gray suit, expensive, confident. He looked at me, our eyes met, and I saw it, the disappointment, the betrayal, like I'd betrayed him by exposing the truth. I looked away, took the stand. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Amanda Cross, started with basics. Dr. Williams, can you describe your professional background? I'm a school psychologist, PhD in educational psychology, licensed specialist in school psychology. I conduct psychoeducational evaluations for students suspected of having disabilities. How many evaluations have you conducted in your career? Over 400. And can you tell the jury about your son Marcus's evaluation by Dr. Vance? I told them everything. The initial testing, the diagnosis of severe learning disability, the recommendation for Bridges Academy at $62,000 per year, the IED that showed mild dyslexia needing only $4,000 in services. Dr. Williams, what was the discrepancy between Dr. Vance's recommendation and the IIE recommendation? $58,000 per year for services my son didn't need. And what did you do after discovering this discrepancy? I analyzed Dr. Vance's evaluation, found that she'd only tested my son for 90 minutes. Standard protocol requires 6 to 8 hours. Her diagnosis didn't match his scores. And when I reviewed her other evaluations, I found a pattern. What pattern? All minimal testing, all severe diagnoses, all referred to Bridges Academy. Amanda pulled up a chart, showed it to the jury. Dr. Williams, this chart shows Dr. Vance's referral patterns compared to other school psychologists. Can you explain what this shows? Dr. Vance referred an average of 25 students per year to private placement. The average for other psychologists is 4 per year. She referred 6 times more students than her peers. And why is that significant? Because learning disabilities occur at relatively stable rates in the population, about 5 to 10% of students. For one psychologist to consistently identify 6 times more students suggests systematic over-identification. Thomas's lawyer objected, Your Honor, Dr. Williams is not qualified to testify about Dr. Vance's clinical judgment. The judge cut him off. Overruled. Dr. Williams is a licensed psychologist qualified to interpret evaluation data. Continue. Amanda showed me Marcus's evaluation report. Dr. Williams, Dr. Vance diagnosed your son with severe learning disability. Based on these test scores, was that diagnosis warranted? I looked at the scores I'd memorized. No. His cognitive scores were average to above average. His reading scores were low average to borderline. That indicates mild reading difficulty, not severe learning disability. But Dr. Vance is an experienced psychologist with 23 years of practice. Why would she make such a significant diagnostic error? I don't think it was an error. I think it was deliberate. Objection. Thomas's lawyer stood. Speculation. Sustained. Dr. Williams. Stick to the facts. Amanda nodded. Let me rephrase. Dr. Williams, did you investigate whether Dr. Vance had a financial relationship with Bridges Academy? Yes. I found that Bridges Academy paid her $187,500 per year as an educational consultant. That's approximately $7,500 per student, she referred. Murmurs in the courtroom. A juror's eyes widened. And did you investigate whether Mr. Reid had a financial interest in Bridges Academy? Yes. Public records show he owns 40% of the company that owns the school building. His district placed 93 students there over 5 years. That's $18 million in public funding to a school he profited from. Objection? Relevance? Your Honor, this goes to motive. I'll allow it. Amanda turned back to me. Dr. Williams, in your professional opinion, were these children placed at Bridges Academy based on their educational needs or based on financial incentives? I looked at Thomas. He was staring at the table, wouldn't meet my eyes. Based on financial incentives. And how many children were affected? 127 over 5 years. 127 children misdiagnosed. Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions. Thomas's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Older man, expensive suit, calculated smile. Dr. Williams, you said you've conducted over 400 evaluations. In those evaluations, have you ever made a diagnostic error? I hesitated. I'm sure I have. Diagnosis is complex, so errors happen. Even experienced psychologists make mistakes. Yes, but, and isn't it true that you have a personal bias in this case? Dr. Vance evaluated your son. You disagreed with her diagnosis, so you went on a crusade to destroy her career. I didn't destroy her career. I questioned an evaluation that was going to cost my son his educational future. But you didn't just question it. You investigated her, filed public records requests, called other families. You went far beyond a concerned parent questioning a diagnosis. Because I found a pattern you wanted to find, because you couldn't accept that your son might have a severe learning disability. I felt my face flush. My son doesn't have a severe learning disability. The ILE confirmed that. The ITU requested. The ITU conducted by a psychologist you chose. Don't you think that psychologist might have been influenced by what you wanted to hear? I didn't choose the psychologist, the district did, and Dr. Torres is a well-respected. Dr. Williams, isn't it true that you were misdiagnosed as a child, that you were told you had ADHD but later determined not to? My breath caught. How did he know that? Yes, so you have personal trauma around misdiagnosis. Don't you think that trauma might have clouded your judgment, made you see a conspiracy where there was simply a difference of professional opinion? This wasn't a difference of opinion. Dr. Vance tested my son for 90 minutes and diagnosed severe learning disability based on scores that didn't support that conclusion. She did the same thing to 126 other students. Allegedly, we've heard testimony from several parents who believe their children did need placement at Bridges Academy, who are grateful for Dr. Vance's thorough evaluations. So maybe, Dr. Williams, you're the one who's wrong. Maybe your personal bias and your traumatic history have led you to misinterpret data and destroy the careers of 2 dedicated educators. I wanted to scream, wanted to show him the files, the scores, the financial records, the pattern that was undeniable. But I just said quietly, I interpreted the data the same way any competent psychologist would. Dr. Vance overdiagnosed students and referred them to a school that paid her. Mr. Reid approved those placements and profited from them. That's not a conspiracy theory, that's fraud. No further questions. I stepped down, hands shaking, walked past Thomas. He still wouldn't look at me, and I realized he was going to fight this, going to claim he'd done nothing wrong, going to paint me as a bitter parent with a vendetta. Maybe he even believed it. The prosecution called 17 parents of students who'd been reevaluated. One by one, they testified. Sarah Mitchell, mother of Tyler Chen, Dr. Vance told me Tyler had severe learning disabilities, multiple processing disorders. She said he'd never succeed in regular school. I believed her. I put him in Bridges Academy for 3 years. The IET showed he has mild ADHD. He needed medication and classroom accommodations, not full-time special education. He's back in regular school now, thriving, but he lost 3 years. 3 years of being with his friends, 3 years of believing he was severely disabled. I'll never get those years back. Marcus Johnson, father of Aisha, they told us Aisha had auditory processing disorder, executive functioning deficits, multiple severe disabilities. We trusted them. Aisha spent 4 years at Bridges. The ICE showed she has dyslexia, just dyslexia. She needed tutoring. She's 14 now. 4 years behind her peers socially. 4 years of being labeled special ed kid. She still believes she's stupid, even though the tests proved she's not. How do you undo that? One after another, 17 families, same story, children misdiagnosed, segregated unnecessarily, labeled for life. And the defense's strategy? Attack the IEs, claim they were biased, claim the children really did need special education and the new evaluations were wrong. But the numbers didn't lie. 103 out of 127, 81% misdiagnosed. That's not a few diagnostic errors. That's systematic fraud. The jury deliberated for 2 days. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just waited. What if they found Thomas not guilty? What if the jury believed his lawyers believed I was a bitter parent with a vendetta? What if 127 families never got justice? On the 3rd day, the verdict came: guilty, all counts, Thomas Reid and Patricia Vance. Conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, theft of government funds. The courtroom erupted, parents crying, some with relief, some with anger that it had taken this long. I sat there, numb. Thomas was led out in handcuffs. He looked at me one last time, and I saw it, not anger, not betrayal. Shame. He knew, he'd known all along, and he'd done it anyway. Sentencing was 3 weeks later. Thomas Reid, 18 years in federal prison. Patricia Vance, 14 years. Bridges Academy shut down permanently. Assets liquidated to pay restitution. The 127 families compensated for the cost of unnecessary placements. Average payout, $192,000 per family. But money doesn't give back lost years, doesn't remove labels, doesn't undo trauma. I stood outside the courthouse. Parents approached me. Some thanked me. Some blamed me for not catching it sooner. One mother, Jennifer Rodriguez, grabbed my arm. My daughter spent 5 years at Bridges, 5 years believing she was severely disabled. The IID showed she just has mild dyslexia. She's 17 now. She's so far behind socially. She has anxiety, depression. She believes she's stupid even though she's not. 5 years? Dr. Williams, your son almost went there, but you stopped it. Why didn't you stop it for my daughter? I didn't have an answer, because she was right. I'd protected Marcus, but I hadn't thought to warn other families, hadn't thought to investigate until it affected me personally. I'm sorry, I whispered. Sorry doesn't give me back 5 years. She walked away, and I stood there carrying the weight of that truth. I'd saved Marcus, but I'd been too late for 127 others. 6 months after the trial, I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I visited Thomas in federal prison. He was allowed visitors. I signed up, drove 3 hours to the facility, sat in the visitation room. Thomas walked in. Orange jumpsuit, grayer, thinner, older. He sat down across from me, picked up the phone. Keisha, I didn't think you'd come. I didn't think I would either.
Silence?
Heavy, full of 20 years of history, grad school, mentorship, betrayal. Why did you do it? I asked. You taught me that our job is to help children, to get it right. What happened? He looked at his hands. I had debts from grad school, from bad investments. I was drowning. And Margaret approached me with an opportunity, buy into Bridges Academy, get a share of the profits. It seemed harmless at first. The school provided good services. Students who needed intensive help got it. But then you started referring students who didn't need it. I didn't think of it that way. I thought we were erring on the side of caution. Better to over-identify than under-identify. Better to give kids too much support than too little. You diagnosed severe disabilities in children who had mild learning challenges. You segregated them from their peers. You destroyed their confidence for money. I know. His voice broke. I know what I did, and I'm sorry. But Keisha, you have to understand, the system is set up for this. Schools get more funding for special ed placements. Psychologists are pressured to identify more kids. Private schools profit from public placements. I didn't create the system. I just used it. You exploited it, and you exploited children. I helped some of them. Some students really did need Bridges. 24 out of 127. The other 103 didn't. But you sent them anyway, because every student meant money. He was quiet. Then you're right. And I have 18 years to think about what I did. But Keisha, I need you to understand something. When I taught you at UGA, when I wrote your recommendation letter, I meant everything I said. I believed in helping children. I believed in ethical practice. And somewhere along the way, I stopped believing. I started justifying, started telling myself little lies that became big lies. And by the time I realized what I'd become, I was in too deep to stop. You could have stopped any time. Maybe, but I didn't. And now I'm here, and 127 families hate me, and my own daughter won't speak to me, and I deserve all of it. I looked at him. My mentor, my teacher, the man who'd believed in me when I was a nervous grad student, and I felt pity because he'd traded his integrity for money, and now he had neither. Thomas, I need you to know something. You taught me to get it right, to put children first. And even though you didn't follow your own advice, those lessons mattered. I became a psychologist because you showed me it was important work, and I'll keep doing that work the right way because of what you taught me, and in spite of what you became. He nodded, couldn't speak.
Goodbye, Thomas.
I hung up the phone, walked out, didn't look back, and I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore, just sad. Sad that someone I'd admired had destroyed himself. Sad that children had suffered. Sad that the system allowed it to happen. But I wasn't helpless. I could do something. I started an organization, the Ethical Evaluation Coalition, free advocacy for parents who question IEP evaluations, training for psychologists on avoiding bias and over-identification, oversight for private school placements. We helped 40 families in the first year, reviewed evaluations, requested IEs when appropriate, caught 3 more cases of potential fraud before children were misplaced. Marcus is in 6th grade now, reading at grade level, still gets tutoring twice a week, but thriving, on the honor roll, playing basketball. Happy. He knows what almost happened. Knows he almost went to Bridges Academy, knows I almost signed the paperwork. Last week he asked me, Mom, why didn't you sign it? And I told him the truth. Because you cried. You told me you weren't stupid. You begged me not to sign, and I listened to you instead of the expert. So I saved myself? You did, and you saved me because you reminded me that children know themselves better than test scores do. He thought about that. Then what about the other kids? The ones whose parents did sign? Some of them are okay. Some of them are still struggling, but we're helping them. We're making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else because of what happened to me, because of what almost happened to you, and because I want other parents to question evaluations the way I questioned yours, to trust their instincts, to demand proof, to get it right. He hugged me. I'm glad you didn't sign. Me too, baby. Me too.
But the truth I don't tell him, the truth I carry every day,
I almost did sign. I held that pen. I was seconds away from destroying his future. And the only reason I stopped was luck. Timing, his tears hitting me at the exact right moment to override my trust in the system. That's what haunts me. Not the fraud I exposed, not Thomas's betrayal, not the trial, but the knowledge that I almost failed my own son, that my professional expertise almost convinced me to ignore my maternal instincts, that I was one signature away from being on the other side of this story. 127 families weren't as lucky. Their children cried too, begged not to be labeled, insisted they weren't stupid, but their parents signed anyway because they trusted the experts, the way I almost did. And I can never undo that, can never give back those lost years, can only work to prevent it from happening again. My name is Dr. Keisha Williams. I'm a school psychologist. I've conducted over 500 evaluations in my career, and I'll never forget that I almost became the parent who trusted the wrong one. Thomas Reid got 18 years, Patricia Vance got 14 years, Bridges Academy was shut down. 127 children were reevaluated, 103 were found to be misdiagnosed, 24 actually did need intensive services. Families received $192,000 average restitution, but no amount of money returns lost childhood years. I started the Ethical Evaluation Coalition. We've helped 63 families in 2 years, caught 5 more potential fraud cases, trained 200 psychologists on ethical assessment practices. Marcus is thriving. 6th grade, honor roll, basketball team, reading at grade level. But Emma Rodriguez is 17, 5 years at Bridges Academy, diagnosed with severe learning disability she didn't have, now has anxiety, depression, and believes she's stupid despite average intelligence. Tyler Chen is 11, 3 years at Bridges, still socially behind his peers, still afraid of being called special ed kid. Aisha Johnson is 14, 4 years at Bridges, brilliant artist, but convinced she's broken because experts said so. Was exposing the fraud worth it? Did I save more children than were hurt? I don't know. Some days yes, some days no. But I did it anyway, because the alternative was silence, was letting it continue, was protecting a system that failed children. Subscribe to The Quiet Reckoning if this story resonated with you. This is where we tell stories about the cost of truth, about systems that fail those they're meant to protect, about parents who have to become investigators to save their children. Drop a comment. If you discovered your child's diagnosis was wrong, would you have the courage to fight it, or would you trust the experts? Because that choice changes everything. I'm Dr. Keisha Williams, school psychologist, mother, advocate. And I'll never forget that I almost signed that paperwork. Almost sent Marcus to Bridges Academy, almost trusted the system instead of my son. The pen was in my hand. The signature line was empty, one signature away from destroying his future. Marcus saved himself by crying, by begging, by being brave enough to say, I'm not stupid. 127 other children begged too, but their parents signed anyway. And I live with that knowledge every day, that I was seconds away from being one of them, that luck and timing saved Marcus, not my expertise, not my professional judgment. Just a 9-year-old's tears at exactly the right moment.
That's the truth I carry.
The guilt that never fades. I saved Marcus, but I was almost too late. And for 127 families, I was too late. That's the cost of truth. That's the weight of justice. And it's a weight I'll carry forever. One day at a time, one evaluation at a time, one family at a time. Getting it right. The way Thomas taught me, the way he forgot to do himself. That's all I can do. That's all any of us can do. Get it right, or at least try.